Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming this morning. My name is Aisha Dixon. I'm the director of the UCLA Emeriti Retiree Relations Center, and we report to academic personnel Vice Chancellor Michael Levine, and we help coordinate over 700 to 800 new retirees every year. We have about 18,000 retired faculty and staff in our database. So we're really excited to have this program for the UC Retirement Administration Service Center, also known as the RASC. I did submit some questions in advance, so I will mute everyone so that there's no stray garbage people or landscapers in the background. But if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will address them towards the end of today's presentation. We did invite all the other UCs, so we do have quite a bit of people here from Berkeley or Los Alamos. So if you want to change your name to what campus you're coming from, that would be great. It's optional, but we are recording today's Zoom, so that way we can add it to our YouTube channel, and I will put our information into the chat so that way you can contact us in the future. So I want to welcome our speakers today. We have Michelle Estes, who is the Client Relationship Manager, and Bernadette Green, who is the Interim Director or Director now.
It's official.
It's official. Okay.
1 year.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so without further ado, I will turn it over to Michelle and we'll get started.
Well, it is our pleasure to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to bring you information about the RASC. I've been with the RASC just a little over a year and a half, and I have the pleasure of working for Bernadette Green and her vision. She brought me on personally, so I'm grateful to her. And I will let Bernadette share her screen as she is the whiz with the PowerPoint. So Bernadette.
I think you might be muted.
Oh, no, I haven't said anything.
Oh, you did. Okay. Oh,
getting myself all set up here. 1 second.
okay.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to say again, on behalf, echoing Michelle's comments, thank you very much for including us, Aisha. And it's always nice for me to have the opportunity to not only speak with campuses, but also to talk with our retiree partners. And so this is specifically for you. And then, of course, if there is content that we don't cover, would love to answer your questions. We also should have Mary Sanchez on the line, who is also an analyst that helps us manage all of the data that we have and to include the metrics. So just starting out, we're going to talk about high-level processing performance results. Again, this is all as it relates to retirement. And there were a couple of questions about survivors, so we've got that in here as well. But then also want to walk this committee through our member contact strategy. And I can see the photos on my screen. I just want to make sure it's not blocking the view of the presentation. Are we still okay? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so let's just start with overall processing results for the RASC. I think everyone is aware that we look at our performance year over year. We have various cycles of performance activity within the RASC. We have what we consider to be our 2 peak seasons, which are those calendar date events where we have more than one individual submit their retirement applications on that particular day. And of course, July 1st is the day where we have the most activity. And then of course, we have anything that happens in return. And so as you can see from this slide, in 2021, the RASC processed just shy of 5,000 retirement applications, and that we're continuing in that trend. So as you can see here, we have a service level agreement, and the service level agreement commitment is to provide a confirmation statement to the retiree within 45 business days from the day that they submit their retirement election. And so what this slide is showing you is that for the most part, we've been able to achieve that when you look at these numbers in average. However, in July 1st of 2021, which was last year's peak season, we actually did not achieve our service level agreement. We were providing an average of 48 days. For July 1st of 2022, we actually well exceeded the service level agreement of 34 days. And that really was the benefit of the new no lapse in pay and benefit continuation program. But as you can see here for post July 1st, and those are any dates, retirement dates from July 2nd through the 3rd of January, we're averaging 56 days. And so when I saw those numbers this morning, I spent a little bit more time with Mary deep diving into those numbers. And we had at least 30 cases within this particular window where we had folks who were not receiving retirement estimates within a period of 6 months. So it's been quite some time for the post July 1st, but we're working to make sure that we correct those numbers. We are well into our January 4th peak season. We're averaging 39 days to provide a confirmation statement. We did have the no lapse in pay and benefit continuation program, and those applicants have been processed and will be paid at the beginning of February. And then, of course, we've quickly moved to our pre-July 1st peak season, and we've already got 176 people that have submitted retirement applications. And then, of course, July 1st starts again at the beginning of April. But this is just a summary of our performance results comparing 2021 to 2022 calendar year. Now, if we think about these results, one second here. Because we were being hosted by UCLA, we wanted to show the UCLA numbers specifically. Again, looking at the service level agreement that we have in place, the total number of retirements that we've processed year over year. Last year for UCLA, and again, that includes UCLA Medical as well, we were averaging 51 days for the July 1st peak season. This year, 2022, we're averaging 35 days for the peak season. And again, we have 54 days for the post July 1 performance. But this is the UCLA specific data. The next slide here, because we do have other campuses that are on the line, we wanted to show our performance for the calendar year 2021, 2022 performance. And as you can see, for the associated students of UCLA, they're averaging 56 days, which is outside of our SLA for the year. Also for UC Hastings, they're averaging 48 days against the 45-day service level agreement. And UC Irvine Med Center is experiencing 47 days outside of the service level agreement. But for the most part, all of our other campuses, and again, this is the average of all retirements that we process for the year, are well below our 45-day service level agreement. And before I move to the next slide, I'll pause and ask, are there any questions?
If you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question.
Bernadette, this is Sue Abels.
Hi,
Is
Sue.
the variation among the locations due to specific situations that are only occurring at those locations? I mean, I'm looking at ASUCLA, for example.
Yeah. Well, to be quite frank, it really is not necessarily the location itself, but it goes down to the individual member and their actual employment history. Because when we looked at it, there's not necessarily a location trend. And unfortunately, when you have smaller numbers, if you notice, UCLA has only retired 10 people this year, and UC Hastings as well has only retired 11 people. When you have smaller numbers, the experience is more of a holistic experience, because if you've got a retirement that's maybe 60 days outside of the SLA, you'll see that. But when you look at numbers like UC San Diego that has 433, it's not to say not everyone is receiving a confirmation statement within 45 days, Sue, but when you factor that into the average, because you have more retirees, the number then becomes more of an aggregate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you ever look at the range then for
We do.
locations?
Yep, we do look at the range, and we do look at the bell curves as well.
And can you say anything about the outliers? What's causing the outliers to be
Well,
long?
we can see the number of days, Sue. What we haven't gotten into is the specifics of why it took so long.
Mhm.
Mary and I were looking at a couple this morning. There was one that we were looking at. It took 156 days.
Wow.
And this particular one, we actually spent 90 days of that time trying to get that member through the verification process, which is getting all of the documentation that we needed to be able to move it over into calculations. And then when we got to calculations, this person also had reciprocity. And then they were also part of the 415 limited, which meant that it had to go to another group for another review. And
Right.
so when we talk about all those retirements, Sue, that you see in that slide where we talk about the complexities, when you add that on top of getting the documentation to move it forward, it only extends the time.
Mhm.
Now,
Okay.
I say that to say, I still see that as a RASC issue, right? Because we are the ones that need to ensure that we get people retired in a timely manner. So we are really moving the team to be much more intentional and proactive to ensuring that we have all the documentation that we need so that we can retire them. And we are still, really counting on standing up our new retirement counseling team, which will really take a much more proactive role and be much further along in the process, meeting with members so that this doesn't necessarily become an issue and a more lived experience.
Okay. Thanks.
Do we
You're
have
welcome.
time for
Ber-
one more question from John?
Absolutely.
Hi,
Absolutely.
Bernadette. This is John Gilbert in Santa Barbara. Thank you
Hi.
very much for being here today. I really appreciate it. You may address this in the rest of your talk, but I'm curious what other metrics you track besides days to confirmation. For example, metrics that have to do with response time to customer queries, metrics that have to do with time to final resolution of retirement, of survivor benefits, and of retiree healthcare.
Okay, we do have other metrics that we do track, John. We don't track everything. I do have survivor metrics with me. We do track for insurance how many of our members are moving to retiree insurance. We do track our metrics as it relates to open enrollment, but there are still metrics that we're building. But I'll talk about more of those metrics. You'll also see in here, we have metrics for our call center. We also have metrics for our secure messaging team. And then we're still continuing to expand on metrics as well. So we'll cover more of those, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the next retirement trend that we're going to look at, this is really around providing a confirmation statement. One of the things that we've heard from campuses is, it would be great if RASC could extend, instead of being able to provide a retirement election 90 days in advance, wouldn't it be great if RASC could just give another 30 days and then we could get them in sooner, and then RASC has more time to process retirements. So one of the things that we started doing is looking at the member submittal trends, which really gives us a sense of how we are able to perform and be proactive. So last year, again, 4,256 retirement elections were received. Only 6% submitted just ahead of the 90 days. 32% of the retirement elections that we receive are submitted within the 60 to 89 day window. And then as you can see, 15% submit their retirement elections within the 46 to 59 days. But interesting enough, 15% submit their elections to retirement 30 days prior to their retirement date. But the real interesting number is 24% submit retirement elections after their retirement date. Now, that's not a problem. They certainly can do that, and the plan allows that. We just wanted to highlight the trends of how we receive retirement elections based on the members' experience of submittals. And so we took another look at that from the UCLA perspective. Again, 825 folks, 34% were within that 60 to 89 day window, 14% within that 46 to 59 day window. And again, 24% of UCLA retirees submitted their retirement elections after their actual retirement date. When we look at the distribution between faculty and staff, a lot of campuses want to know how many of these people are faculty, what percentage are staff. This is again overall across the entire UC. 81% of the retirees were staff retirees. 18% were faculty. When you look at the UCLA experience again, 86% of the retirees are staff, 14% are faculty. Most of those elections that we receive, again, were within the 60 to 89 day window, but again, 34% were submitted from the 60 to 89 day. And then as of December 31st, we received 281 retirement elections. And of those, 86% of that population were staff employees. For the 2021 elections, what we do is we look to see, when we talk about receiving applications and how we're able to process. When we go back to Redwood's Go Live, which is in 2019, as you can see, at April, which is the beginning of the season, we only received 93 applications, and it's in the month of June that we received 941 of the applications for that year. In 2020, a little bit more experience, we'd only received 210 applications at the beginning of the season. Again, the peak came for us in May. In 2021, a little bit better, 572 of the retirement elections for the July 1st peak season came in April. Again, a little bit of a spike for May. However, in 2022, which is our busiest peak season that we've had, as you can see, 1,063 applications came in April, and then we actually began to trend down. And this was a really good and positive trend for the RASC, because this was our no lapse in pay program where we had full automation functionality to support the program. And also prospective retirees had the opportunity to opt in at the beginning of the process using UC Raise. So as you can see, we had a really huge spike in April, which is exactly what we wanted. And then we began to trend down with the number of applications that we were receiving. But as you can see, we were still receiving applications for July 1st in the month of July and after the month of July. Okay, so turning our page to talk about the No Lapse in Pay and Benefit Continuation Program. When we first launched this program, we did not have functionality. We ran it as a pilot. It was a successful pilot program, but obviously not as successful as we hoped it would be. And so what we did is we used the information from the pilot program and we expanded eligibility. And that meant that we then added new criteria for members to participate. So we included partial year career. Quadros with no adverse claims were eligible for the No Lapse in Pay program. And then we also used those individuals with service credits, which were in more than one tier, were also eligible. And so as a result of expanding eligibility this past year, we had 1,344 applications to opt into the program. That represented 87% of the retirement elections that we had received by May 13th. And May 13th was actually the cutoff for being able to submit your application to opt in. And then 63% of that total elections received to date. 961 of those applications that we received were eligible to participate and receive their payment on time, which was on August the 1st. Remember, July 1st retirees, your first payment is the first of the month following your date of retirement. And so, the No Lapse in Pay program, we will have that again this year. It's a program that we will have for each peak season. And as a reminder, peak season is always going to be our July 1st, as well as our first pay date in January, which is this pay date is January the 4th. We have done a lessons learned on the No Lapse in Pay program. There are some opportunities that we identified where we could have improved functionality to make it much more simpler for our team to process, but also for us to reconcile those adjustments. And again, we are looking to determine if we can further expand eligibility requirements for July 1 to allow more opportunities for folks to qualify for the program. We're still reviewing that data and should have an update on that by the end of February. And so when you think about no lapse in pay, the intent of no lapse in pay is to provide a provisional payment based on the estimate. And then the RASC will do an analysis on the back end to make any adjustments. And so what's really interesting about this is when we do the analysis, what we're curious to see is how much of a variance will the member experience when we do those adjustments. And so what I'm happy to report to you is that obviously there are folks who are going to have an increase in benefit, which is what you see on the right with the 611 in the deep blue. And then there are folks who will experience a decrease in their benefit, which is the 280 that are on the left side for me. 75% of all the folks who were eligible had a variance within the window of $0 to $5, and that's to their monthly benefit. We take that out a little bit further. 82% had a variance within $10. And then of course, 87% had a variance within $0 to $15. For those who have experienced a variance, we have made the adjustments. They are now receiving their corrected provisional payments. So we've done the reconciliation for that. And for those that we have wider variances where we need to do a deeper true up, they have been communicated to. They're receiving their corrected amount, but we're also doing any type of recovery that we need to for those who are outside of the minimum variance range. But I want to just share this slide with everyone to assure you that the No Lapse in Pay program is successful, but also when we do the recovery, it is still minimal impact to the members. So we're not having these variants of hundreds of dollars where we need to true people up. 87% are within the $0 to $15 variance range. And in most cases, folks are receiving additional money versus us recovery money. So I will pause there and ask, are there any questions?
Okay, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question. Daniel Mitchell says, do people with no lapse in pay also get no lapse in healthcare coverage? If not, why not?
Daniel, they do. It's no lapse in pay and benefit continuation. Now, of course, that only applies for those folks who are currently on UC active benefits, and then they transition over to retiree benefits. So yes, it is with benefit continuation.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Heidi.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, I retired in July, and I think I fall outside of your minimum difference range here to the right.
Mm-hmm.
I've been communicating with, I retired from UC Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been messaging through RASC to find out. I received a confirmation letter in November that was incorrect, and I've been trying to resolve with RASC since that time, reaching out through the electronic system and the message board.
Mm-hmm.
And calling, and I've been told a supervisor needs to call me back because they acknowledge there's a discrepancy, but the correction hasn't been made. And they said I've, supplied all the information and they agree with it in the message board, but that the change hasn't taken place. So when you say that they've all been trued up, I'm a little bit concerned because I'm not getting confirmation back from RASC or even communication back from RASC on this.
Okay, let me take your name, Heidi. Now, are you receiving the corrected benefit amount in your monthly retirement payments?
I have not received the correct amount since July 1st. I did go through no lapse in pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I received payments starting July 1st, but it is the incorrect amount.
And are you within this 70 participants, which are outside of the $15 variance? Are you in that group?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Michelle, if you could take Heidi's name and have Judy Omont connect with her.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Heidi, if you want to send me a chat with your name,
I
date
will.
of birth, and I'll pass it along.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one more question in the chat, and then you can continue. So does no lapse in healthcare coverage apply if there's a transition to Medicare?
So the transition in Medicare happens when you turn age 65. So when we do the transition of benefits, it transitions you from your active benefits to your retiree benefits. And then, of course, the Medicare enrollment has to occur. So we don't transition from active to Medicare. We transition from active to retiree benefits, and then we enroll you in Medicare. And that's assuming that the member has also done their requirements to enroll in Medicare first.
Okay, any other last questions before we move on? Okay.
Okay, thank you. So the next slide, talk about survivor benefits. We have the survivor benefits. Obviously, this is a critical area for a lot of folks, but also a critical area for RASC. And as you can see, what we have here is we track two key metrics here. We have our monthly applications, and we also have our one-time applications. For those on the monthly applications, these are folks who are transitioning to receive monthly benefit payments. And as you can see, we have a service level agreement to provide benefits within 30 days on the monthly applications. For the month of December, that is still at 88 days. When we look at the one-time payment applications, our service level agreement for one-time payment applications is 60 days. That is now trending up to 147 days. One of the things that we've identified in the RASC is that this is a real critical area, but also one of our areas where we are considerably underperforming. And so we're working to implement our service enhancements, and we've talked about that for quite some time. So I wanted to provide an update on where we are with the service enhancements. And one of those service enhancements is our new survivor intake team. The intent of the survivor intake team is this is going to be a dedicated team with a dedicated phone line for survivors to help manage survivors and their transition onto survivor benefits. The plan is that survivor intake will go live the last week of February. We've just approved 3 offers for new survivor intake analysts. We have 1 on board. We are also in final interview stages for the supervisor of this group. We're also in final review stages to implement Bennett, which will also go live with this group. And we also have the phone number identified for survivor intake. So just to give an insight into that, what will happen is anything that the survivor needs to help transition them, meaning documentation, the follow-up of getting the required documents for RASC, their applications. This is now going to be supported through this dedicated team working individually with the survivors and the survivors advocate if they're working with someone to help shepherd them through this process. So with that, I want to pause. I'll go back to the slide and ask, are there any questions for me regarding survivor and of course our new survivor intake process?
Okay, if you have a question, feel free to unmute.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Sure.
Daniel, hi.
Yeah, so let's hypothetically assume that somebody today, there's a death and somebody is a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
What, they are normally receiving both health care and a pension benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And now we move into a period where they're no longer eligible for just being a dependent. They're now a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So could you walk us through what kind of payments, what happens to their health insurance during these periods that you're showing on the screen? Do they just get nothing? Are they cut off of their health insurance? Do they just continue receiving the pension as if the former person is still alive until things get corrected and then it's adjusted after the fact, or exactly what happens?
Sure. So this is how it should work, Daniel. When we are notified of a death, we immediately stop pension payments because the plan does not allow us to continue pension payments once we're formally notified of the death. So the pension benefit is immediately stopped. However, we also then go into the system, we terminate the health insurance for the retiree, and then we continue the insurance for the survivor and any of the other beneficiaries that are on our plan. Insurance continuation is immediate up to 90 days. Once, and the intent is that their benefits should have been processed within that 90-day window. And then, of course, you know, we go back and then we do whatever type of retroactive true-up we need to do for premiums, et cetera. But this is a manual process. We have to manually go into the system, work with the carriers, terminate the retiree, and then ensure that the survivor and or other beneficiaries, their benefit continuation continues to occur. We don't resume retiree benefits at all. Once we do start to pay a survivor, they are receiving their survivor benefit, not the previous pension benefit from the actual retiree pension.
So now I'm looking at numbers that exceed 90 days here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm on, now the survivor has got 90 days of health insurance, but it's taking longer than 90 days to complete all the paperwork and so on. So what happens in that interim between 90 days and the actual final completion?
So within that period, our insurance team is actually managing that through manual efforts, meaning looking at the reports to determine what survivor benefits have not been processed and working with the carrier specifically to continue their benefits. So where we rely on the system, it then moves from reliance upon our tool to reliance upon our staff to ensure that those folks are continue to be enrolled in the carrier benefit programs.
I'm asking that because we've had reports of people who got very efficiently cut off from their health insurance, even though as survivors, even though they were what you're describing is somebody is supposed to be making sure that that doesn't happen.
No, I mean, Daniel, one of the things someone else pointed out, and I have to agree, we are very good at turning off benefits. And, you know, I think that's appropriate if we're also as efficient in ensuring that we pay timely and that we process timely. So we have had issues where this hasn't worked, where we have not been monitoring the survivor benefits as we should have. We've tuned our processes. At one point, we were reliant on our survivor team to manage the survivor benefits. We've made a shift into that. Right now, all healthcare benefits are now being managed through our insurance team under our new insurance supervisor. So we've had to, and this has been part of our discovery as we've been building our new survivor intake team, understanding, hearing not only from unfortunate experiences from survivors, but also feedback that we've gotten that people are experiencing this, but also looking at, you know, the impact that we cause when we're not actively and intentionally managing the work. And so we've made some shifts into who's managing what work to ensure that those folks are 100% focused on that. And one key focus is ensuring that the insurance team is handling all insurance issues across the RASC, which was not being handled before.
Would it be helpful to have some version of, just like you have no lapse in pay, to have some version of that for those survivors who are, you know, somehow getting cut off after the 90 days because things didn't get processed properly? I mean, it would require some. Yeah, I understand that there are complications in doing that and working with carriers and, you know, premiums that didn't get paid or should have been paid or whatever. But it would seem that if it can be arranged for the pension, that something like that could be made to work for health insurance. Because health insurance, particularly, we're talking about people who are getting up in their ages. They may have ongoing health issues that need continuous treatment and so on.
Sure. So the short answer is yes, that would be helpful. There are two aspects I want to just point out, and then I'll go back to the survivor piece. On the no lapse in pay and benefit continuation, this took us about maybe 8 months to get the system functionality in place so that we could actually systematically run that program so that it's an automatic transition and it is invisible to our carriers. For other retirees, for example, we talked about that person that was 156 days in the process that was not eligible for no lapse in pay. If that person had medical insurance, what we would have to do is very similar to what we do with survivors. We have to manually notify the carriers that we're continuing to work on this particular individual's retirement, and then we manually ensure every month that they're on a file that we send over to continue benefits. So that's somewhat working like some of the survivor cases. We are looking at a way to do a survivor program. We won't necessarily call it no lapse in pay because the benefit amount for a survivor is very different than the benefit amount for pension. So we're looking at what opportunities can we undertake to implement something like that, but then also what system functionality do we need to adjust in order to be able to support that? Because the way that our current system is designed, our Redwood system, it automatically shuts off those benefits. It does not allow us to resume survivor benefits until we actually get them through the process. But then there's another caveat where those survivor benefits are also tied to the retiree benefits. So if there's any overpayment, that we have to recoup funds in order for those benefits to become payable. So there are several things that we need to figure out how we're going to systematically allow us to provide some type of program along those lines. But I wouldn't necessarily call it no lapse in pay, but it's a way for us to do some type of short-term survivor benefits for a period of time that until we can get all of the paperwork in order for us to continue this longer term benefit. I do want to say that our Vice President of System-Wide HR, Cheryl Lloyd, is very motivated for me to find a way to solution this and implement a program that will work in this manner. So we are working on that, Daniel.
We do have one other question in the chat. So in regards to survivor benefits, is there any way that RASC can have the benefits continue for 120 days versus 90 days just because of the average time to completion is longer?
Well, so the reason that we do the 90, Aisha, is because most carriers don't allow for us to do it for a longer than 90-day period. And that's because of the way that billing is done and the way that we balance our books. So that's the reason that we have to, when we work with carriers to do it longer than 90 days, we do it outside of the system because the system would automatically reject them if they're not showing as an active person in our system.
Okay. Any other survivor questions before we move on?
Yeah, I had one. This is Dan here. I put it in the chat.
Oh, hi, Dan.
It has to do with the documents that are required for survivors.
Mm-hmm.
I looked once, excuse me, and I found that the list was pretty much the same as to initiate retirement, such as the birth certificate, marriage license, partnership agreement, and so on. Pretty much all the same except for the death certificate. And so my question is, why does the survivor need to resubmit all of these documents when in most cases they were submitted at the time that the retiree initiated retirement?
So I think in most cases, the thing that holds up most of our ability to process retirement benefits, survivor benefits, is the lack of having the death certificate. And the other piece of that is, when we have not had the proper documentation that we needed, let's say, Dan, to your point, we had marriage evidence and we don't have that we have not been actively following up with survivors to ensure that we get that information. You know, we've been notified, but we haven't been actively and proactively following up to ensure that we're driving to get them to completion of benefits. And that's the whole intention of this survivor intake team, is that we've got a team that's actively looking at that, managing that on a day-to-day basis. The other thing that we're doing is there's also what's most important is the actual application. We have now, we're starting to automate those notifications. We're going to be using the Bennett tool as one avenue of communication, but we're also starting to automate those notifications within Redwood. So there's just a lot of work that needs to be done. When we implement our new retirement counseling team, that will be another charge of retirement counseling, is to talk about survivor benefits. And at that time, ensuring that if we do need those types of documents, if they're not already on file in our system, that we collect those documents from the retiree at the time, so that if God forbid we have to move to survivor benefits, we have all of those documentation, with the exception, of course, of the death certificate, and that will also allow us to process a little bit more expediently.
So I appreciate all that. It did seem to me that if there was any change in the designated survivor or beneficiary, then that would be a holdup. But the death certificate issue surprises me. I've had a little experience with that, and I've gotten death certificates, at least from one county, within about 10 days. And so it's surprising to me that this is actually a holdup. I would think that a survivor could, I think, have a very good chance of being able to submit her death certificate within 30 days at most, in order to speed this process along.
And it's gotten much better, but if you go back, think about the height of COVID, obtaining a death certificate during the height of COVID was quite a challenge. Now, we have looked at opportunities where, to determine if we could get the death certificate on behalf of the survivor. And we talked to our legal team, and, there isn't a service that we could ascribe to. And we did talk about, could we invest in the death certificate? The challenge would be, it would depend on the county. It would depend on the state if we could have access to that. But I do want to assure you, we're exploring all avenues that we can do proactively to get this information so we can complete the process and get people paid.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Those are great questions, by the way. Aisha, any more questions from the chat before I move forward?
That's it on the survivor topic. There's other ones, but we can wait until you get to a different topic.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Oh, so just to again reiterate to the team, we are planning for a go live for the new survivor intake team and process. That's going to be towards the end of February. We've just approved offers for the survivor intake team. Hoping to have all those individuals onboarded mid-February, and we will start onboarding and training for a go live. And again, I do want to emphasize the survivor team and a number for survivors. There will be a new dedicated 800 number for those individuals, so they will not need to go through our call center. They'll go directly into the team, and we're really, really looking forward to that. So now talking about member contact and our strategy around member contacts, and also first and foremost, recognizing how difficult it's been for folks to connect with RASC. And, really just want to highlight, if we think about what we're doing strategically as we think about the new operating model, we are very focused on member services and customer satisfaction, but also quality. And in order for us to do that, we're going to have to leverage not only tools and technology, but we also have to have very highly skilled team members to do that work. And so just to give you a recap of what we faced in the year 2022 when it comes to a member contact perspective. Overall for RASC, incoming call volumes increased an average of 20% from the previous year. When we opened up last year and in January, just for that month of January, we received well over 19,000 calls in the month of January. And we have slowly been seeing those trends come down, but just imagine still trending down from a 59% increase in call volume. And I think in December, the call volume was 20%. And I'll share that with you in just a moment. We were not staffed to support the incoming call volumes. And so as a result of that, members were experiencing unprecedented extended hold times. They were not able to get callbacks. And if they were getting callbacks, it was taking us days, sometimes weeks to return calls. And in that instance, we missed the member, and then the member was never able to connect with RASC. And then, of course, as a result, they started reaching out across the system to get support to help them connect with RASC, meaning Aisha and other campuses were receiving calls, and probably your offices and even some of you for ideas on who can I reach within RASC to get someone to return my call. And so the other issue that we had is that we were unable to hire quickly enough in order to be able to impact that. And so, we were really focused on that and thinking about what's happening prior to our 2022 open enrollment process. We're right now in post-open enrollment period, which is the month of January. And now we're also well into our new year, end of year activities, which is W-2s and 1099s, which will be released here before the end of January, which also drives up call volumes for us. As we talked about the numbers, this just gives you a sense. If you look at 2021 versus 2022, those percentages that you see within those monthly slides represent the increase in calls that we have from the previous year. Now, I do want to say that these increased call volumes reflect a lot of things. When you think about January, that really came on the back end of the open enrollment, the implementation of our new pharmacy provider, the impact that had on our members. And of course, that really drove call volumes. And then you add on year-end support, people trying to get through multiple times. So that really does reflect the call volumes, but it also reflects people trying to understand, to Dan's point, where's my survivor benefits? Can someone talk to me about my retirement? So this is not just to represent one issue, but in overall, as you can see, RASC received just shy of 200,000 calls last year into our contact center. And so as an average, when you look at 2021, and this is overall average, in 2021, our highest average to answer a call was 35 minutes. 2022, our highest average was an hour. In 2021, when we launched the callback feature, an hour and 20 minutes was the longest time for someone to receive a callback. And then, of course, in 2022, it was 13.35. And I do want to say that in November, we actually disabled the callback feature because we weren't able to return calls in a timely manner. That became much more of a burden. So the callback feature was disabled. The other area that we want to talk about is regarding metrics is our secure messaging. This is when someone submits an inquiry through UCRAs for an email response. Again, we did have a slight spike in our increased message, but if you look and see that in 2021, it was 9 days average to close a message. In 2022, we're averaging 22 days. Our service level agreement is to close messages within 2 business days. In addition to that, what we also did is to help with the call volume, we pull folks off of our secure messagings, put them over into our phone calls, but still not enough to keep up with the trend. And as you can see, we were averaging 50,000, well over 50,000 secure messages into our contact center in the previous year. So what have we done to really help with this? The one thing that we've done is we've entered into a partnership with an organization by the name of Unify HR. And this is a current UC vendor. They've been working with UC for a number of years. They work with UC at the launch of the Affordable Care Act. And they also help to manage the Family Medical Eligibility Verification program. Unify HR is now providing incoming call support, and they actually provide all of the call support for this year's open enrollment. So for those folks who called in for open enrollment support, they actually were talking to Unify HR representatives, and they were able to answer phones within an average of 3 seconds. We are accelerating our recruitment efforts. We've just completed an agreement with a vendor, a current UC vendor by the name of Korn Ferry. They are actually going to be bringing a team on site that's going to work specifically with the RASC to help us fill our 55 vacant positions. In addition to that, they're also going to be working with the UC Pass Center, who also is experiencing the same challenge as other organizations are in staffing up and bringing in a dedicated team specifically for UC Pass Center as well to help them staff up. And as we've shared before, we are hiring 26 new career roles within the RASC, and those career roles will have direct interactions with members. So these are roles that are going to be interfacing with members, and members will have direct interfaces to folks who can help them with their solutions. So once we implement this, we will have expanded the channels to connect with RASC. And so what this will do is, if you think about our tiers now, we really have 3 tiers for members to connect with RASC. But with our new strategy and our new member contact channels, we'll be moving from 3 tiers to 7 tiers. And so as you can see here, the direct phone line for Survivor, that goes into effect at the end of February. We are still working on retirement counseling. We are in the middle of interviewing that manager role. We've just gotten the approved job profile. In addition to that, we've just launched the RFP for the portal, which is where members will be able to request individual one-to-one counseling sessions. So that's going to be a completely separate direct channel for members to connect with. Tier 1 support, that went into effect with open enrollment in October and November. We also came back with Tier 1 support with Unify HR in January, and they're going to be providing Tier 1 support for us ongoing. Insurance liaisons. This is going to be a really critical area for us, again, to really help us as we think about our strategy for resolving some of the emerging issues that we have with insurance. This also includes Medicare ensuring that we have folks who are working with the carriers, guaranteeing continuation of service, but also providing direct contact and support for those members that have emerging issues. We are in the process now of interviewing for those 3 insurance liaison roles. Document receipt, which is still a very viable channel. We still receive a lot of incoming mail and fax. UC Raise, which is secure messages, that is open. And then of course we have our dedicated call center team, and we are adding an additional 13 call center reps to the team. And we've already hired our first slate of hires with 5 new call center reps. They're RASC employees as well. So if you think about what we've talked about, and you think about the various contacts and the way that members reach out to us, I kind of want to give you a sense of where we're going. So when you look at that slide on the left, and you look at the percentage of the calls answered by Q, January through July, keep in mind, this is the cues that the members saying, this is the type of support that I need. We actually launched a new telephony system in July, which then allowed us to expand our queues so we can add more queues for members to get more specific about their needs, in hopes that that will help us get to those individuals much sooner. So you can see the spread of the queues. So thinking in mind, we've got the queues, and now we're adding these new dedicated contact channels. What I want to demonstrate to you here is how that will impact the member's experience. So if you think about for the calls, 9% of the calls that we're receiving right now that are coming in through Survivor, that 9% is going to go directly into that Survivor intake team at the end of February. Retirement counseling, 22% of the calls that come into the call center are requesting retirement counseling. Members will now be able to actually schedule those appointments in advance. Those will be done via Zoom So there will be direct contact interface, but that is coming soon. We're scheduling that for June of this year. Insurance liaisons, 12% of the inquiries that come into the call center are insurance related. Again, when we hire those insurance liaisons, that'll be another direct point of channel where they go into the liaison as opposed to the call center. Tier 1 call support, the types of things that we refer to as Tier 1 is password resets. That's 24% of the calls that we get. Those calls are now going to Unify HR. The open enrollment, which we just closed, but again, that's Tier 1 support. And we do get calls for post-open enrollment support, folks wanting to confirm things. Maybe, you know, they thought they would have had their cards by now. All those calls are going to Unify HR. The request for tax forms, that does get that's a real big number, especially in the month of February. All of those calls are going to go directly into Unify HR, who will have access and will be able to also direct those folks through routes. And then, of course, documentation support. We get a lot of inquiries from folks who want to know, did we receive a piece of documentation? And Unify HR will be able to look into our UC root system and see that that documentation is available. I do want to point out our Unify HR team are here for Tier 1 support, and so they can confirm information. They will not have access to our Redwood system, so they don't have the access to be able to go in and update a member record. That is actually more Tier 2 support, and that type of query will go directly into our call center, and our RASC employees will handle that. So that's for the call center. Now let's think about what happens when we have our secure messaging. The same type, members, you know, when they put in a secure message, they kind of identify what type of query do they need. And as you can see, the largest number that they have there is UCRP retirement. And so again, survivor, that 2%, those are directly going to the survivor intake team. The retirement counseling, which is the 49% of the queries that come in where they're requesting someone to call them back and for a counseling session. They will actually be able to schedule that, and that 49% will go to the retirement counseling team. Again, 17% are insurance-related queries. That's going to go directly to the insurance liaisons. And again, those other 6%, which are, what color is that, Mary? The document requests, that 6% will go directly to the Unify HR team. Will be able to respond to that through UC Roots. So with that being said, I'd like to open it up for questions and answer any questions that I can.
So there's a couple questions in the chat before we get to you, John and Santa Barbara. So given what you said about the hold times and the wait time for people to get a call back or to get a response from RASC, what's the best course of action for people with these extended call times?
I mean, right now we're averaging, Aisha, right now our hold time is around 35 minutes for someone within the call center to answer the call. That's going into our RASC call center. And I'm assuming that those are calls that are not password resets, any of the Tier 1 support, because the Tier 1 support queries are going directly to Unify HR. And that team is still averaging around 3 to 4 seconds, right, Michelle, to answer calls. So all of those are getting, you know, picked up right away. It's just still within our RASC team, we're still averaging around 35 minutes to answer a phone call.
Okay. And then I know a number of us at the retirement.
Sorry, can I just say that, but everyone is still calling our 800 number. You dial our 800 number and then you select the queue that you want. And that then drives the call to the right individuals.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there are a number of us at the retirement centers that do have access to reset passwords. Is there some sort of system or mechanism that, you know, us as retirement centers can do to support people who are just calling for a password reset?
Well, you know, sure you can, but that is actually one of the areas that Unify HR is supporting. And what I would recommend is have them call the 800 number and push the password reset queue, because again, they're answering the phone within 3 to 4 seconds and they're more than capable and equipped to reset passwords. So please, I would encourage you and other retiree centers for those types of queries to send them to the 800 number, have them push the password reset queue, because the Unified HR team is standing by to answer those quickly.
Okay. Let's see, they are a couple other questions, but let's get to John first at Santa Barbara, and then we'll go to David.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. This is just anecdotal. Let me say something about my own experience, but it corresponds to many of the stories that people have told me, which is that when I went through this process last year, you know, I experienced all the problems that you've talked about. But the particular thing that struck me was that I never spoke to anyone who had any agency to deal with my problem. You know, a number of times I did actually manage to speak to a RASC to a RASC service person on the phone or by email, and in every case, they looked at my documents, agreed that is an error in my wife's medical coverage was wrong and needed to be corrected, and that they would ask the team to correct it. And then the next time around, a month later, the person I got had no record of that conversation, and again, no agency. So is there any way to give individuals who are trying to go through this process a sense that they know how to get to talk to somebody who can fix it? You know, I mean, it shouldn't be necessary to come to a session like this and speak to you in person to get a problem investigated. Thanks.
Yes, and I want to say, John, I think your experience, there are people who are still experiencing that today. You know, we, like everyone else, have experienced turnover. We've had folks retire. We have had individuals who have now accepted wonderful roles at various campuses within our own system-wide HR groups, where they can now work 100% remote. And, you know, and these are folks who've been wanting to do something different and grow their careers for various reasons. So we've lost a lot of intel as well. The other piece I would say is, as we think about what RASC formal model is, and quite frankly, I was going to say model and motto, Michelle, but it is quite the same, is that no one talks to a member except the call center. No one else talks to a member. Well, the call center is only as effective as the information that's in our notes. And however, a lot of the questions that members had really needed the subject matter expertise, which was sitting in our operations or our folks who are not outside of the call center. So one of the things we have done is we've said that, well, number one, this is what we said to our RASC staff. We all talk to members. We are member contact centers. So if there's someone in the call center and a member has a more detailed question and need more detailed support, then we expect that the call center will be bringing in the subject matter expert, and the subject matter expert is working with the member to resolve the issue. Believe it or not, that is a tremendous culture shift for the RASC. It's taken us, we still struggle sometimes with some of our legacy folks getting on board. We have a lot of folks, I'll use the word, they're very shy about talking to members. And so we're working on that. One of the other things that we're doing is, and so that's why you're seeing, John, those expanded contact channels where folks can get directly to the experts. And we're also building that expertise within those teams, and also building those direct contact channels. So those teams are very much aware that those calls are going to be coming to them. They're not going to be filtered through the call center. The other piece that we're working on is we're also in the final stages of bringing on a vendor that's going to come in and help us accelerate training across RASC. And that is building training, what onboarding training modules we need, training built around the plan itself, how the plan works, the plan design, building our customer service training, the way that we interface and interact with members, but also internally and with colleagues across the RASC. And then also spending time with each of the business units building in the appropriate training to get some of these newer folks up to speed. We're bringing in a lot of new skill sets. We're bringing in folks from other sectors, not necessarily within the education or the retiree space, because it is a very niche space. So we're bringing in folks who have spent more time interfacing with customers, who enjoy interfacing with customers, who prefer direct interface and interaction with customer. And so what we need to do now is accelerate their onboarding, making sure they have all of the right and the correct information as it relates to the plan, but also how the plan works, and answering the questions with members so that members get the right information the first time and we're not giving out erroneous information. So we have a big challenge to resolve there, John, and you are correct. You've probably got someone that can only go as far as the script in front of them. We're working to not be reliant on scripts in order to service our members, and that's going to take us some time to build that confidence.
Okay, David?
Okay, so this I want to congratulate you on first being permanent now.
Thank you.
And also, I remember last April at the April Kukra meeting, you gave a description of where you stood, and I have to congratulate you also on all the progress. And I know it's slow. Staffing was a terrible problem then, and it seems to be an evolving solution now. Also, and I hope I don't get into trouble for this one, okay?
Okay.
I want to thank you for your personal involvement in a couple of our very sticky cases in Los Alamos, and then with what was it? Tens of thousands of phone calls every day. I don't want to get you inundated, and that's why I don't want to get into trouble, but I really want to thank you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And my pleasure.
So we did have a couple questions that Michelle entered in the chat, but those asking, your tax forms will be sent by the end of the month and electronically, unless you have electronic service not on your account, then it'll be mailed to you. Someone had a question about how were the service levels set and how do they compare to, I guess, PERS service levels? CalPERS, I'm assuming is what you're asking, Jim? CalPERS, okay.
Yeah, Jim always asks me these really good questions, by the way. So some of the service levels, Jim, are actually inherited. So the 45-day service level agreement for the confirmation statement, to be honest, I can't tell you where that came from. The survivor service level agreements, again, these are all inherited service levels. And to be quite frank, I'm not necessarily in disagreement with I'm not in a position to disagree with either of them, because I think that, quite frankly, I think we can provide monthly benefits to a survivor within 30 days. I think that's more than reasonable. But if we get to the point where we feel like we can't do that and we're processing optimally, then that's a different conversation. Right now, we're not in a position to disagree with any of the service levels. What I will say to you is that in some cases, when we came in, the service level to provide to a secure message within the RASC, it was actually 10 business days. And my response is, no way should an email message be 10 days. And so we actually started looking at best practices. What were other organizations, not necessarily retiree system, but what are other organizations doing, and what are some of their service levels? Because what I will say, Jim, is whenever I get a question about an email response or something along those people, no one ever says PERS or STIRS. They always say Amazon or something that they're using on a more frequent basis. So we're just trying to make sure that we provide best practice in the actual space, not necessarily comparing ourselves to other retiree systems. Now, we do have a relationship with PERS. I have had conversations with Anthony about what they're doing in their survivor space, because we don't hear very much about it. He was very transparent in saying, we were in the same space that you were, probably a little bit, you know, it was pretty bad for us as well. And he shared some of the things that they've done. And, you know, that they actually have something where they continue, they have benefit continuation for survivors that meet certain criteria. The challenge that we have against what they have, their system is programmed, and they've gone through the system program, which allows them to operate it more flexibly. We need to identify what are the system barriers and get support so that we can remove those barriers, because what we're asking to do right now goes against the plan. Now, we have had conversations with our legal colleagues who have pointed out their concerns and the risks. Now I have to figure out what's the best way to mitigate them to get them on board, because they'll be the ones that will have to help me defend it. Is that okay, Jim? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we are a little bit over 11, so I want to be mindful of those who have to leave. But the other question we have is, let's see, I think that's it for the chat. If anyone has a question.
Can I say one thing, Aisha?
Sure.
Okay, I see Marianne Gade here, and I just wanted to, hi Marianne. I just wanted to just say something. I was on a call last year, and it was the Kukrakusia call, and Marianne said something to me that was very profound. And she talked about, you know, I was talking about all the technology and what we were doing to make things more efficient. And then Marianne just kind of pointed out, you know, that's all great. And she recognized there's a lot of work, but not to forget that we're just talking about people. And there are folks who want to be able to connect with a human being and be able to talk to someone. And I just wanted Marianne to know, I hear her whenever we have these conversations. I am looking out to make sure that we have individuals talking to individuals, Marianne. So I want to make sure you know I had not forgotten what you said. That had a really big impact on me. And I hear it in your voice when I talk about it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are you going to make this available, this recording, for those who, for one reason or another, couldn't participate?
Yes, I will upload this to our YouTube channel later today once it's downloaded into the cloud or something. Marianne, final question.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Oh,
yeah, I actually did have a question. All the time you were talking, Bernadette, about these different channels. Is there going to be a long list of different phone numbers to call for each of these? You say the calls aren't going to go through the call center. How will we get to the specialized group without waiting for a period of time? I just what's a simple mechanism when I pick up the phone?
Yep. So the survivor intake, that will be the only new phone number. That we decided to go with just a very different phone number for that group, and it's Michelle came up with it. It's a great number. Nobody else likes it, but I love it. But it will have a different phone number. Everything else, but even if someone calls the 1-800 number, Marianne, if they check that they want survivor intake, it will also route to that phone number. So anyone can still dial the 800 number. You're going to get to those channels. The intent is to say that's not the only way, is through the phones. And most important for the retirement counseling, you can still call the 800 number and you'll be able to schedule an appointment with retirement counselors. But for those folks who want to go onto the portal and look at the times, and you'll also be able to choose which counselor you want to talk to, you'll be able to schedule that through a portal.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, Bernadette and Michelle, for taking your time out on a busy retirement season coming up to take our Zoom program. We really appreciate all you do for all the retirement centers and all the campuses. I know it's a big field, and with the small staff that you guys are working with to handle 10 campuses and all the retirees that go through the process, I really do appreciate you taking today away from your schedule to answer some of these burning questions. Hopefully we took care of all the questions that were asked. I think we did. So everyone have a great Wednesday. Any other final words, Michelle or Bernadette?
No, just thank you so much for having us. And if you ever want me to come back, I'm happy to do so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.